I've had these glasses from Cutler and Gross for about 6 years now, and if you're interested in them, they are model number 1290V2, and I have them in both black and clear acetate. I originally chose them because I felt like they were a good basic shape for me, but also had a little bit of character. More recently, I added a third pair from Warby Parker into my rotation, but these are a little bit more conventional. And if you're curious about them, they are the York model in polished silver. I got them because I wanted to experiment with a metal frame. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is because I recently decided I wanted my glasses to have a little bit more personality. And it got me to thinking about how important eyewear is if you're someone like me who cares about how they present themselves. How small design tweaks in material, shape, and form can totally transform the look of glasses and as a result, your face. Eyewear isn't just about vision. There is a lot of design happening and it's on maybe the most visible part of your body. So stick around and by the end of this video, you'll have a few more ideas to consider if you're in the market for new frames like I am. And even if you don't wear prescription glasses but do wear sunglasses, and by the way, you should, I'll talk about how this is also a great opportunity for new kinds of self-expression. Now let's get going. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Peter's Prism. If you have to wear glasses like I do, have you ever considered how important they can be in either elevating or bringing down your look? Today, I want to talk about aesthetic choices in eyewear for the style conscious. I want to think about frame choices alongside design concepts like contrast, balance, proportion, and symmetry, because I think a lot of it applies when you're considering the right glasses for you. I've never given this as much thought as I have until recently when I decided I wanted to add some new frames into my rotation of glasses. So be forewarned that this is going to be as much a learning experience for me as it might be for some of you. There is so much happening when you put on a pair of frames, and why any of this is important is because your glasses become the focal point between you and someone else when you're interacting with them. Chosen wisely, a great set of frames can add depth, interest, and character to your existing style. They can silently signal the kind of person you identify as, or wish to be perceived as, and help you engage with whomever you're speaking with. But chosen poorly, they can look attention-seeking and distracting. You might not care and just want to be as loud as possible, but glasses aren't the same thing as a loud sweater, in my opinion, simply because they're framing your eyes and your face. And since we live in the world and have relationships with one another, I think it's important to consider the role they play in your day-to-day communications. Imagine speaking with somebody who is wearing glasses like these, for example. Personally, I would find these to be so distracting and annoying, I wouldn't be able to focus on the person I'm having a conversation with. I looked at a lot of brands and settled on 6 that I think warrant some consideration. One thing to keep in mind, as I'm sure you know, there are a lot of brands out there, so if none of these work for you, at the very least, take along some of the ideas from these examples and see what else you can find that will. But at the end of the day, make an intentional, informed choice in eyewear because it's important. If you find this video helpful, informative, or even entertaining, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all things style and design. In design, micro-typography is about making text easier to read and more visually appealing through tiny adjustments like letter spacing, word spacing, line spacing, kerning, as well as font choices and sizing. On a day-to-day basis, you might not think about these things, but they do matter and affect the overall readability of text. Imagine, for example, reading the first page of a book with the typography styling on the left compared to what you see on the right. If you want to move beyond neutral and make a tiny bit more of a statement, think about the various variables of glasses and how making tiny adjustments can similarly have a bigger overall impact. I was having lunch recently with a friend and his glasses were from Rose & Co, and I was struck by how pleasing and complimentary they were to him, but in the most subtle way. I couldn't quite put my finger on why, and I think this is why I drew this design analogy. If we look at their A9 model, you might be quick to dismiss the style as pretty average, but again, there are very subtle details that I feel elevate this beyond the ordinary, such as the gentle slope at the end pieces, the contrasting gold accents, the keyhole opening. It's all very considered. It's subtle, but upon closer inspection, you can absolutely see the difference. And if we take a look at the A5, I think what elevates these glasses is the combination of the contouring across the brow and the subtle, soft beveling. It's ever so slightly chunkier at the end pieces, which gives the lenses just a smidge more character. So my friend spoke very highly of these glasses, and at $295, I think a style like this is a great deal. Rose & Co.'s optical designs in general feel understated and sophisticated. There's a timeless quality to many of these designs, and there's a minimalist ethos I feel throughout the options. They feel classic, but tweaked into a direction for someone who's a bit more specific about their Taschen books, Muji housewares, and has a wardrobe that's punctuated with Thoreau and Loro Piana. He's tasteful and intelligent, but not performative and never flashy. This is a guy who is confident but not excessive. I'd describe his entire vibe as considered but not overly curated. It's normcore meets gallery owner minimalist, someone who dresses with care but avoids performative fashion. Rose & Co. is a great brand that provides frames that allow expression without being loud and sculptural without being severe. Along the same lines of micro-typography, there are times in design when you're limited to a very small number of variables. Imagine, for example, that you're asked to design something with only one font. You might think that's extremely limiting, but you can actually do a lot with only a single font. This idea came to me when I was shopping for new glasses. How do I appease my minimalist leanings if I want to make a bolder statement? I'm going to call this Maximal Minimal, and I found two frames from Cutler and Gross that take a minimalist approach to design, but then pump up the volume ever so slightly past the kind of aesthetic we just saw with Rose & Co. First up is the 1396, which superficially might look really simple, but if you unpack what's happening here, there's much more. I think the obvious first association is that these glasses are reminiscent of David Hockney's, and as it turns out, he has famously worn an older pair that are now archived, and that's model 0736. I think these glasses are a little bit more eccentric than your average pair in its design details. You can see the hinges fall almost midway into the lens height. The temples are black but semi-transparent, and most importantly, the perfectly round lenses and thick bridge are what give these glasses the eccentric character I'm talking about. But it's not over the top. To me, it feels like an exercise in tweaking minimal variables to get to this level of expression. Similarly, Style 9261 has a shape that isn't totally new, but you can see how the curves are really accentuated through the soft beveling. And the brow line is pushed just slightly beyond thick. The eye rim is also a tad bit chunkier than most. Along with the gold temple tip details, the overall aura reminds me of mid-century Hollywood. These are pretty minimal glasses, but the design tweaks push it into a more maximalist vibe. It's slightly retro in overall shape, but also modern and sleek. It's got a chunky, modern, brutalist vibe that's tempered by the subtle retro cat eye. Creating tension through maximizing details like this is another way that you can approach eyewear without looking too crazy. It pushes the accessory as functional into more of a statement territory. I'd call this guy the understated iconoclast. He's got a mid-century styled apartment with raw concrete softened with Persian rugs and Japanese ceramics, photography books, well-worn copies of The Face, Acne Studios, Margiela, minimal jewelry, Brian Eno, Sigur Rós. He's not a loud guy, but he does get noticed. Sunglasses are the perfect analogy to a bold headline in a design that clearly establishes visual hierarchy in your look. And the beauty of sunglasses is that there's so much more freedom when it comes to choosing frames. Because sunglass lenses are typically darker, the glasses act more as a cover than they'd have to blend, as optical glasses do. Frames from James Oro, an independent brand from Los Angeles, are the headline. They offer sunglasses that are anything but timid and have been seen on the likes of Lil Wayne, Billie Eilish, Ben Baller, and Michael B. Jordan, just to name a few. The company was kind enough to send me a few to try out, and I'll admit I was a little skeptical at first, but I actually loved what I saw. This was an opportunity to push my looks into a slightly different direction. Not only do these sunglasses establish visual hierarchy, they also support a theory in industrial design that states if an object looks good at 3 different distances, macro, micro, and nano, it's considered well designed. The black Hunnids, for example, at a macro level have an oversized, wide, squared-off silhouette that establishes visual hierarchy. But at a closer micro level, you can see its thick acetate construction and glossy black acetate. And then when you really zoom in at the nano level, you notice details like the gold accents and the temple detailing. There's contrast in material and color. These are sunglasses with attitude and a sense of confidence. The Titan also has a very strong presence, like the Hunnids, at a macro level. Closer up, you start to appreciate the beveling and the matte, monochromatic finish, and up close, you notice the finer details, but can appreciate the overall subtler approach to a big statement sunglass. And lastly, their icon style in this champagne color offers a pretty different approach. We still have the very dominant shape and scale, but as you get closer, you start to appreciate the color and warmth. And up close, you can appreciate the sturdy build, visible hardware, and the overall depth they get through color and transparency. I think all 3 of these styles act like a design layout that tells you exactly where to look first, and why that matters. The glasses assert visual control in the same way that design can guide a viewer's experience, using size, contrast, and placement to establish a strong hierarchy. The glasses lead the message here and are meant to be seen first, and everything else becomes supporting copy. If you're interested in any of these frames and many more, there's a special link in the description below that'll give you 10% off on the James Oral website, so make sure to check it out. When you play with proportion in design, you control the size of elements in relation to one another, and that interplay between elements can help build emphasis or enhance subtlety. Jacques Marie Mage, an independent eyewear brand founded in 2014 by French designer Jacques Mage in Los Angeles, is known for its unique limited edition frames with a focus on craftsmanship. They're kind of instantly recognizable, mostly because the brand's frames are known to be quite large and thick. If we look at their Enzo style, for example, it just looks very robust overall. The acetate is thick in all dimensions, as are the height of the temples. It looks quite heavy materially, but the overall design winds up feeling somehow balanced. The tall temples, large lenses, and overall thickness create visual dominance. It's like a bold headline in 200-point size sitting next to a 12-point body text. And like all glasses from this brand, there's a vintage quality to these frames. And there are a lot of visible details, so there's something akin to looking at classic architecture or vintage cars. Its boldness and detail are clearly expressions of the brand, and it shows. The Dylan style takes a subtler approach and employs a rectangular, rounded shape with a very subtle cat eye. Like the Enzo, it's structurally visibly solid, but slightly less intense. The tapered temples, narrower eye rims, and sleek curves tone down the heaviness, and the gold hardware and the overall thickness keep it consistent with the brand. It's definitely not boring, but also not overly aggressive. And there's a lot of geometry at play. There's proportional interplay between the curves and the sharp brow, and although it's overall quite thick, the visual weight is distributed to enhance both aesthetics and wearability. I think with both of these frames, there's an element of scale and dimension that feels very intentional, but not super distracting. Yes, these are not light glasses, but the idea with these frames is that they amp up the volume of your expression in a way that feels controlled, using proportion as the variable. They might be distracting, but it's in a way that feels very intentional and not in a bad or annoying way. When I think of the guy for these glasses, I envision deep browns, charcoal black, oxidized silver, and muted earth tones, with an occasional rich accent like burgundy. I think rugged sophistication with an intellectual edge, like a modern-day Hemingway crossed with a minimalist architect. Maybe he collects rare books, frequents independent galleries, enjoys post-punk music, and likes an aged whiskey. I see black and white portraits of mid-century artists like Miles Davis, brutalist architecture, Japanese wabi-sabi ceramics, and moody films from directors like Jim Jarmusch. This man is a mix of stoic elegance and rebellious intellect. The glasses are intentionally curated. I've talked about grids before and how important they are in design. They bring order to chaos, establish flow, and can go a long way in communicating without even being visible. Glasses can act the same way, and when I stumbled upon Native Sun's optical frames, I immediately thought about absence and presence in the same way that grids support design. These lightweight titanium and gold frames make a statement, but it's subtle, precise, and elegant, never disruptive or chaotic. If we look at their REM 55 style, for example, they're extremely light looking, almost absent, but the design details, particularly through these hexagonal lenses and open temple tips, really create a sense of order and rigor for the face. The glasses are manufactured by hand by a small team of craftsmen in Japan. And when you look at these frames like they're Jaeger, you get a sense that there's a high level of dedication behind these designs. The subtle gold touch in the double nose bridge and the quiet angularity instilled into the aviator rims are the kinds of details that elevate designs like this to another level. I'm particularly fond of the Aston. There's a beautiful architectural quality to this design without it being overbearing. The extended negative space in the bridge, the grooves along the bottom, and the perfectly circular frame shape make these glasses feel precise, elegant, and subtle all at the same time. Who is the guy that wears these? I kind of think of him as an introspective intellectual type. This is a man who reads print magazines, journals in Moleskine notebooks with Japanese pens, and dabbles in amateur analog photography. He wears drapes and has a full stable of linen clothes for warmer weather. He's curated his style and has presence, but isn't pretentious. In design, there's a term called Retro-Futurism that refers to the aesthetics of old or vintage ideas of what the future would look like, but from a modern perspective. And at the same time, it's a view of the past, but as seen from the future. Some examples of this include cyberpunk, steampunk, and ray gun gothic, and you can see it today in interior design, as well as products like those from teenage engineering. LA Eyeworks feature many designs that I feel fall into this aesthetic. These glasses are definitely on the outer edge of self-expression and could be perceived as borderline wacky, especially if you chose some of the brighter color options. So I'd suggest proceeding with caution there. The duffel has an almost space-age silhouette in its chunky acetate frame. There's a mid-century geometric boldness, but with a modern sculptural quality to this design. The oversized lens shape feels kind of 60s mod, while the thick, thin temples make me think of antennae or the Jetsons. Getting these in a bold color could really enhance this kind of retro-futurist duality. Their ornette frames have an almost wraparound shape, which make me think of goggles and 50s sci-fi ideas of what people wore in space. The very chunky brow line and slightly squared off rims play off one another and create a little bit of tension. Maybe it's a kind of tension between past and present, which is probably why I think of these as retro-futurist. While they are a bit quieter than the duffel, there are enough design considerations here, especially with the circular temple tips, that make these a big statement for your face. And again, if you chose to go with a non-traditional color, you'd be making that much more of a statement. In both of these and many other frames from LA Eyeworks, they're able to express retro-futurism by balancing throwback charm with forward-thinking design. They're interestingly both vintage and futuristic at the same time. Who are these glasses for? The guy I see in my mind wears COMME des Garçons Homme Plus alongside APC. There's a nod to a minimalist vibe, but also a clear tendency to want to break some rules. He's a cultured nonconformist with a little bit of an avant-garde flair. Someone who might wander through bookstores wearing a vintage Casio digital watch. David Bowie, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Eero Saarinen, and Le Corbusier come to mind for him. He's at the intersection of Blade Runner and the Royal Tenenbaums. So there you have it. From Rose & Co.'s meticulous micro-typography to LA Eyeworks' bold retro-futurism, we've explored how these eyewear brands master the principles of design, balancing form, function, and fearless creativity. Whether it's Cutler and Gross's maximal minimalism, James Oro's disciplined visual hierarchy, Jacques Marie Mage's sculptural proportions, or Native Sun's grid-like precision, each brand proves that eyewear isn't just utility, it's wearable art that can help amplify your expression of who you are or who you want to be. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What kind of glasses are you shopping for? Or do you have a brand or style that you love? Drop a comment below and share. And please, like this video if it inspired you, and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the intersection of design, fashion, and style. Remember, great design has the power to elevate our lives if we let it. So until next time, stay true to your style and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!